So today we're diving into the story of a small New England city with a massive story of transformation. We're talking about Gardner, Massachusetts, a city that went from being this huge industrial powerhouse to, well, facing some really tough times, and then engineered one of the most amazing comebacks you'll ever hear about. This is the story of how Chair City became a model city.
I mean, the model city for America? That's a pretty bold claim, isn't it? But it's a title that's actually being used to describe Gardner. And this isn't just, some local pride talking. This city is genuinely turning heads on a national level for its incredible success.
And when I say national level, I mean the highest level. The city's mayor was actually invited to the White House to lay out their strategy, to explain how they did it. So, naturally, that brings up the big question. What's the secret sauce here? How did a place that was once defined by its shuttered factories completely reinvent itself for the 21st century? Well, to really understand the answer, we first have to go back and understand what Gardner used to be. All right, let's step back in time. We're going to the era that gave Gardner its famous nickname, Chair City. For more than a century, its entire identity was built on wood. And believe me, it was the undisputed king. So the foundation for all this was laid really early on. The town gets incorporated way back in 1785. In just 2 decades later, a guy named James Comey mixed the first chairs. That one little spark in 1805, it lit an industrial fire, especially with the founding of the Haywood Brothers Company, which would go on to become this massive global giant. And what a fire it was! Just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about here, at its peak, Gardner's factories were pumping out 4 million chairs every single year. I mean, just try to picture that. The sheer volume is staggering.
But Gardner's influence went way beyond just pure numbers. Their furniture was in the White House, it was even in Buckingham Palace. And the city's innovation wasn't just about furniture. It gave us a workplace invention that literally changed everything, the practical time clock. And yep, that's where we get the phrase punching the clock.
But as is the case with so many of these industrial boomtowns, the music eventually stopped. After a century and a half of prosperity, the very factories that built Gardner, they started to fall silent. And that led to a really long and difficult period of decline. You have to understand, making furniture wasn't just what Gardner did, it was what Gardner was. The city's entire social and economic fabric was woven from wood and sawdust and the incredible skill of its people. And then, it was gone. The forces of globalization and economic change that just swept across America, they hit Gardner, and they hit it hard. The industry that had defined it for generations basically packed up and moved, leaving this massive void behind. Gardner's story wasn't unique. It was a textbook case of what we call deindustrialization, a really painful process that hollowed out countless manufacturing towns all over New England and the rest of the country. For decades, it really seemed like that might be the end of the story, but it wasn't. And this is where we get to the most exciting part of the story, the comeback. Starting in the 2000s and then really picking up steam after 2020, Gardner's leadership didn't just sit around and hope for a revival. No, they engineered one with a clear, deliberate plan. Okay, so their strategy had 3 main parts. First, they went right after the visible decay, redeveloping all those neglected properties downtown. Second, they focused on filling empty storefronts with new businesses. And third, and this was the real game changer, they made a super strategic decision to professionally and aggressively chase down outside grant money. And that grant writing strategy? Oh, it paid off in a huge way. The city invested an initial $50,000. The return on that, a mind-blowing $50 million in secured funds. That's a 1,000% return on investment, fueling projects all over the city without having to burden the local taxpayers. It's brilliant. So what can other towns learn from all this? What's the lesson from Gardner's success? Well, it turns out it's not magic. It's a replicable blueprint, really, built on proactive leadership and just plain smart strategic decisions. When you boil it all down, the blueprint is pretty clear. You need active leadership that just confronts problems head-on. You need to make smart, targeted investments to bring in that outside capital. And you can never lose focus on the fundamentals, creating a community where people actually want to live and where businesses want to set up shop. And the results really do speak for themselves. Beyond the new buildings and the revitalized downtown, the city is getting a reputation for its quality of life. It's been recognized for being affordable and even as one of the kindest cities in the state. So the transformation isn't just economic, it's cultural too.
And that kind of leaves us with a final thought here. Gardner's journey from chair city to model city proves that a comeback is possible, even after decades of decline. It really makes you wonder, what parts of this proactive, strategic blueprint could be used to help other old industrial towns write their own incredible comeback story?